Good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Meep. Happy Mother's Day. I'm enjoying my tea in my IBM mug. And today I'm just going to go over one of my other big, I don't know if you want to call it hobby, but thing I do all the time, which is reading. And yes, obviously I'm reading articles online all the time, but I read a lot of books. If you can find me out on Goodreads, I'm listed under my actual name, and I believe I have 48 books listed on the currently reading list. Obviously, I'm not reading them all at the same time. There's reasons some of them are long-term habit, long-term list elements, as it were. But I'm having to clean out my office at work because my company is moving spaces, and it's just a great time for me to bring my books home. So I'm going to start off with a fun book. It's To Be or Not to Be. It's by Ryan North, and it's illustrated by a bunch of different artists. This very broody Hamlet, I believe, is that looks like Kate Beaton's style. She does Hark a Vagrant, which I love her stuff. I'll link to some of her books as well. But it's a choose your own adventure version of Hamlet. If you're an 80s kid like me growing up with the choose your own adventure books, this is a pretty fun way to go through Hamlet. And by the way, the actual Shakespearean plot, so this is a challenge. Can you get the Shakespearean plot out of this? It does exist in here, but the question is, do you remember the different plot points when you have to make a decision? Because you may end up with Ophelia as an avenging warrior. Okay, so the next couple ones are a little more academic, but not exactly. They're intended to be straightforward. So here's one called Statistics Done Wrong, the Woefully Complete Guide. The guy who wrote this, okay, Alex Reinhardt, statistics instructor and PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University, and maybe by this time he has his doctorate, and had a bachelor's in physics from UT Austin. And the whole point of this book, actually, it's geared towards people in the sciences who are having to use statistics to bolster, their results, especially social science, and basically where they fall down. Now, the reason why I'm interested in this, I actually, obviously I know statistics and I know how things can go wrong there, and I used to teach statistics as well, is that I like gathering examples of where statistics have failed or in real life. And this is why I was really well known for teaching the intro stats class at NYU, because actually the main thing I did was teach the other graduate students about real life examples in statistics, because you wouldn't find it in the textbook that was assigned for the course. And the example I always like to use, and I don't think he has it in this one, is an infamous University of California, Berkeley study where they were showing sex discrimination in graduate school admissions. So the admission rate for women into the graduate schools of Berkeley was considerably lower than that of men. Well, that's not much of a result to base anything on, because, of course, the individual university as a whole. So they say, well, let's find out in which departments this evil misogyny or whatever discrimination is going on. So they looked through, and either for every department the admission rate for women was higher, or it was statistically insignificant difference. So what's going on? That's something called Simpson's paradox, and no, it has nothing to do with Homer Simpson. But what it had to do with was men and women weren't applying to the same degree programs. A lot of women were applying to the education department, which had a high rejection rate. More men were applying to the hard sciences, math, and that kind of thing, which had a lower rejection rate. So it was more based on what people were choosing themselves to apply to. Anyway, he goes through stuff for people who don't want to make that kind of mistake when they get their research in the headlines, because if you have a surprising result, it may be that you did something wrong. Okay, the next one. This, I haven't just started this. Again, this is another book I don't actually really need. The No Bullshit Guide to Math and Physics. And this is intended, for people who want to understand the linkages between math and physics. Well, I have math and physics degrees. I know these linkages, but I got this because it's not a very expensive book. And people ask me all the time for recommendations for, prepping for whether it's grad school, or college for specific degree programs. And I just remember how many years it took me. I might have math and physics degrees, but I actually got started really early on trying to learn calculus. And I basically have learned calculus at least 5 times. And I'll write down what I mean by that in the text on the blog post. So I'm not wasting any time here. But he has a pretty refreshing style. And let me just read a little bit from, I guess it was the preface. Okay, so the preface, why this book? The genesis of this book dates back to my student days when I was required to purchase expensive textbooks for my courses. Not only are these textbooks expensive, they are tedious to read. Who has the energy to go through thousands of pages of explanations? I began to wonder, what's the deal with these thick books? Later, I realized mainstream textbooks are long because the textbook industry wants to make more profits. You don't need to read 1,000 pages to learn calculus, and that's true. I first learned from a Dover book called Calculus Made Easy, and it's not very long. The numerous full-page color pictures and the repetitive text that are used to pad calculus textbooks are there to make the $200 price seem reasonable. And again, this is not a very expensive book. Got it on Amazon, and I'm going to be checking that one out. And so for my last two, these are ones that don't really need a lot of plugging. This one I have mentioned before, Skin in the Game, and I'm very slowly going through it. So the way I'm marking my place is I'm using the cover to mark where I am, and I kind of digest it one chapter at a time. The reason I'm bringing up this, and I'm not going to talk about this book more right now, this will be coming up more and more because there are a lot of ideas in here that are connecting to the problem of public finance and public pensions. And so you'll be seeing more about this. But the reason I'm holding this one up is because of the next one, which I don't have a very nice version to show because it's on, okay, I'm not going to show you that. It's an ebook called The Portable Nietzsche. And of course, this is a Penguin book. There's a paperback version, and you can go to Barnes & Noble and get it and that kind of thing. But I deliberately got the ebook because I can highlight notes in the Kindle app and then go back, because some of the stuff I'm highlighting are references that maybe were well known in the 19th century that I don't know now. I don't know who Winckelmann is or Leitenforta or whatever. I have heard of Martin Buber before. And then some of them are the words. It's not that I didn't understand what they meant, but I'm like, ooh, I need to start using purblind again, or teleological. That said, I'm mainly highlighting what are my favorite bits out of Nietzsche, and I've only gotten 30% of the way through. The first portion is a bunch of little snippets of Nietzsche. So here we go. I'm just going to do a couple of okay, here we go. I like this one. An imperative ethics is one that deals with the symptoms of the disease, having the faith while it fights them that it is getting rid of the real origin, the basic evil. Nonsensical, however, is an imperative. Be good as well as be wise or be talented. Basically, it's not useful. And this kind of connects with Melania Trump's be best. Well, okay, well, best maybe you can at least compare yourselves to others. So here we go. The general welfare is not the sphere of truth, for truth demands to be declared even if it is ugly and unethical. So can truth be unethical? That's a question. Let's see, here's another one. Okay, the most striking of the examples is that even a dead man can still spur a live one to consuming jealousy. That is how Aristotle describes the relationship of Xenophanes of Colophon to Homer. And who knows Xenophanes? Well, maybe, okay, I don't know Xenophanes, but I do know Homer. And if you're going to put yourself up against Chaucer, Shakespeare, that's a good goal to shoot for, even if it's not likely to happen. And then I'm going to find the one about the mosquito. And just, here we go. And this is the last one I'm going to do. But if we could communicate with the mosquito, then we would learn that it floats through the air with the same self-importance, feeling within itself the flying center of the world. And I'll leave with that. Happy thought for a Mother's Day and Nietzsche. It's a combo that doesn't really go together.